Hey, Anton,
Yeah, Margaret?
you know what people don't talk about enough?
What?
The playful teasing side of Simon that we see during the Erickson family dinner. Welcome to People Don't Talk About Young Royals. I'm Margaret, my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Anton. My pronouns are he, they.
And we're people here to discuss the show our friends are sick of hearing us talk about.
If that sounds like you, stick around. If your friend sent you this podcast out of a desperate attempt to get you to watch Young Royals, take this as a sign.
Go watch Young Royals, then come back to this podcast.
Margaret, what are we talking about today?
Today we'll be having a character discussion of Simon in Season 1, Episode 1, having decided we have no choice but to stand.
Woohoo! In this discussion, we won't be summarizing the plot of the episode because we already did that. If you need or want a refresher, head back 6 episodes in our feed to our most recent This Week at Hilarska for a full breakdown. This episode discussion will likely be all over the place, so strap in. You have been warned.
Okay. So I feel like we have talked about in length, and I feel like people talk about in length, the take no shit side of Simon. But what I don't think gets enough credit is this lighthearted teasing that he does with Sarah at the dinner table. And then we see it again with Wilhelm at the party, but that's the first time we see this version of Simon that isn't on edge at school trying to stick up for what he believes, and it's just fun.
No, definitely. What I have for that scene is that it's a relatable breath of fresh air after the stiff sterility of Wilhelm's world.
Yes.
And kind of what a family quote unquote should be after the model of the royal family. And Simon is just an annoying brother who isn't afraid to call out his sister for being snobby. And it's just, it's quote unquote real in a way that a lot of the episode thus far hasn't been, for lack of a better way of using it.
Last episode we talked a lot about how relatable we thought Wilhelm was, even though we couldn't relate to his situation.
Yeah.
I think Simon is very relatable in that we can relate to his situation. Because it has that not every family is as happy in things as this dinner scene portrays it to be, but, or at least this part of the dinner scene portrays it to be. We see that, they have their own issues as well. But this sort of siblings making fun of each other, picking fun, friends over, that's very relatable as a situation.
Definitely. I wrote down kind of my general thoughts that finding Simon relatable and even lovable as a character isn't hard.
No.
You stand him basically immediately. I wrote down when he sings louder in
100%
in the choir scene, immediate stan.
100%.
Instantly. You're just I can count on definitely possibly more than one hand the number of reactors who have been who is this boy? Is he the love interest? Tell me he's the love interest. He has to be the love interest.
No, straight up, when I was watching the pilot the first time, and this should have, if I didn't say this in Revolution episode, I should have. But I remember being watching the pilot the first time, and we're who are the gays? Gay is an umbrella term. Who are they? And because I was I know it's got to be Wilhelm, because it's definitely not Eric. But who's the other one? And then I saw that, and I was it's him. It's gotta be. I swear to God, it's gotta be him. Please let it be him.
Yeah, exactly.
I need it to be him.
I think I can't remember. There's one specifically. It might be Gay Watch, my favorite one. But if it's not Brittany, I'm sorry for misquoting you. But she's is this the guy? Yeah, this is the guy. This has to be the guy. That's what I'm kind of taking that from. It's if you go into this show knowing with its reputation as a kind of a cult queer show, it is a kind of a thing of find the gays, in like the best way, honestly. But like he is, but even his sexuality isn't necessarily the reason why you instantly love him. You love him because he, as is established with his like first interaction with August, he's a guy who doesn't take shit.
Yeah.
And
I
like
aspire to be that.
Exactly. And like just in the name socialist guy, and like combined with like the attitude that he has towards August in his first scene with him, like it shows that he has clear opinions and isn't afraid to voice them, which I think you just got hit the nail on the head right there. Like I think for a lot of people, especially those of like Simon's like lower to middle class status, if they were going to a school like Hilershka, you would aspire to be that, honestly. Like it's what we all kind of would want to believe, especially if we're progressive, particularly like leftist or progressive leaning, like that we would be able to be that brave and confident.
Oh yeah, if I went to school with August and he was calling me socialist guy, I would think I succeeded.
Yeah.
I'd be like, thank you, this is what I set out to do.
Exactly. And like then the classroom scene is just like proof of our first impressions.
Yeah. God, the classroom scene.
The lengths to which Simon is willing to go to fight for leftist ideals at this conservative school is like, I think even more than you might initially imagine just from his name. Because like, I remember imagining like, okay, he got the reputation of socialist guy. And then before the classroom scene, I was like, what did he like mention like higher taxes like once? Like that's kind of all it takes in America. But like, no, he legitimately calls everyone out. And then you're just like, oh no, okay, this is kind of an earned nickname and I respect him for it.
Yeah. Yeah, because, okay, I don't know if you've ever taken, like, a government class.
I have a cursory poli-sci knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's not all that relevant for my point. But, yeah, in America, if you're like, what if we paid higher taxes? What if we, like, had public health care? Or, not even that, what if we just got rid of guns? Everybody's like, are you a commie? Are you a communist? Are you a socialist? Are you a Russian
Do you want to
spy?
be like Sweden? Do you want to be like
it's like,
Sweden?
Oh, you want to move to Sweden? It's like, yeah, actually, I do.
Yeah, and so, actually, so Simon's actually kind of talking about like more socialist ideas, as in like social welfare systems.
Yes.
That like counterbalance, counterbalance the market and allow poor people to have a chance to succeed in life.
Yes.
And like the idea that welfare is people scamming the system instead of earning it the right way by exploiting their workers, like rich people do. Anyways,
I respected Simon throughout like the entirety of the episode, right? My respect for him, I think, increased about 10 to 100-fold when he said that. I was like, now I I love this boy.
Yeah.
I need to know where this goes.
Yeah. But I think something that's very important to why I love Simon as a character is that, and we've mentioned this in previous episodes, that isn't all there is to him.
No.
And even that alone is enough to instantly stand him. Like the fact that he is a person who will just sing out louder and just like go to bat for his beliefs in class is already makes him worthy of being a character standing episode.
100%.
But what makes him nuanced and even better is not only the moments like we started off this episode with, like the little moments of like where he's just like being an annoying brother, but like at the end of that scene, and then at the end of his previous scene, like previous like one-on-one interaction with his sister, you see his protective side. And the ways in which he is protective of Sarah, and the way he's protective of his mom.
Yeah, he's very self-sacrificing.
Exactly. which is like almost like a contradiction that we've talked about in previous episodes of like in our Love Among Royal episodes that involve Simon. Like, we talked about the almost, ironic isn't the word for it, but it's like someone who is very assertive and speaks his mind, who is definitely willing to just like bite his tongue indefinitely in order to like preserve a relationship, or willing to straight up lie, in order to preserve a relationship, because he has no way of knowing that he could for sure get Sarah especially into the party, because all August was offering him was him to get there. And like, also, it's not even entirely clear when he tells Linda that like he knows how he's gonna get booze. Like, like he gets there eventually, and like within hours, like he has a plan. But like in the moment, that didn't feel like a very calculated decision. That was a shit. My mom is sad, and she can't be sad.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And then I think afterward, I mean, we see it when he's playing video games with his friend, but it's like, oh shit, I have to talk to my dad now, huh? But he's when he goes to talk to his dad, he seems nervous, but he could very easily be like, Mom, actually, we can't go to that party. But it's like, no, I told Mom that we were going to go to that party, that we got invited, so now I had to do the thing so that we can go.
Yeah, and also
that's very
it would
self-sacrificing of him.
Exactly. And I think in Simon's head, I can see it being a thing where it's like, I already lied to her, or like stretched the truth a little bit. Like, if I went back on it now and made another lie about how we just couldn't go, it would defeat the purpose of the first lie, which is to not make her sad and make her think that we're accepted at this school. So now that I've told her this, I can't go back.
Right.
And I think playing video games with Ayub, like the expression on God, I almost said Wilhelm. The expression on Simon's face, is like our first glimpse at his backstory, of why he is so protective. Like, it isn't. I think it's very, very. I think it's always a really interesting choice whenever a character calls their parent by their first name. I think it can mean a lot of. Yeah. Like the fact that he calls him Mika, and it's not till Ayub calls him, depending on the translation you look at, his old man or just his dad. Like, it's not until that happens that the audience even knows who Mika is. Right. And I think there's various reasons why someone could call their parent by their first name, and not all of them are like automatically bad. But in this case and in this context, I think you immediately get the sense of like, okay, he is estranged from his father. Yeah. We don't really know what that means yet. But like, there has to be a story there, which makes him immediately more complicated.
Yeah. Because, we know it's bad because Ayub is like, don't go to your dad or old man or whatever translation you're looking at. Yeah. You always get depressed when you do, or he says something along those lines. I think it's pretty sure it's literally like you always like don't see him because you always get depressed when you do. Like that's exactly what he says. Yeah. So we know it's bad, but he's willing to do it anyways to protect his mother's feelings.
Yeah. I think the way I kind of describe my emotional reaction to the scene with Mika, and I think I think our listeners probably can hear it in a lot of the times, every time we kind of hit scenes with Mika. I think we both kind of are feeling this. Like, your heart breaks for this character who we've mostly seen get disrespected and self-sacrifice for other people. Self-sacrifice for the people he cares about most. Like, you just like be like, this is what he gets for that? Yeah. Like a truly awful interaction with his father. Like, it's not awful in the sense of like it being outwardly abusive, at least in this moment. Like, it's not and like, but also it's more than just being awkward. It literally makes your heart hurt for him.
Yeah, it's like, Yes, 100%. And you can tell the amount of pressure that he's under. Not necessarily... We talked about a lot Wilhelm's pressure. Simon is under a different kind of pressure, where it's internal. He feels this responsibility to be this person for the people around him.
Uh-huh.
He feels this, like, he's become a parent to his father. We see that when he cleans up his father's coffee table. We've talked about this in, I think, the summary episode. But he's, like, taken on this caretaking role for his parents and for his sister. And that's a lot of pressure to live under. Like, being a caretaker is hard.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Also in this scene is the discovery that Simon officially identifies as gay and is out and proud. Which I have to say, such a slay. Not to date this podcast more than we already have, but it's how I feel in my soul. Simon being like, "I'm gay, Dad," is always such a slay.
Immediately.
Yes. Despite the fact, and we've talked about this, the way that it also still hurts that he actually smiles at Mika's correction of a cute guy then, because it's the bare minimum. But, like, I don't know. I think when I get to my final thoughts on Simon, I think I'll mention what I feel like his sexuality does for me in terms of his, like, standing. But, like, I think it's important to note that, like, with Wilhelm, we talked about last episode, like, the kind of a bit of a gray area you get into calling Wilhelm a queer character as of this episode. With Simon, you get it in this episode confirmed, and you, like, that is just like with we talked about with Wilhelm, like, a character's queerness is always going to be a reason for me to stand them unless they do something so absolutely heinous that it counterbalances it. Like,
we're desperate for representation.
Yeah, that's definitely one way of putting it.
That's not the only reason. I'm gonna put that out there. It's not the only reason.
Yes, but it also helps.
It does help.
That you kind of do sort of have to accept. No, you don't have to. We're not saying anyone has to accept a character just because they're queer or stand a character just because they're queer. But personally, it makes makes it one way easier for me to relate to them as a queer person myself. But it also, for me, it makes me care about them more for the fact that they are representation. And wanting to see, like, how is this show going to tackle having a character who is openly queer?
Yes.
Because there are still shows in the year of our Lord 2023 that don't have a single queer character.
Yes.
And that's a problem that is being rectified. But even then, when they do have a queer character, you bet your ass we're watching them.
100%.
And I mean that in two ways. One is queer people will try their best to tune in to anything with queer characters, but I kind of meant that more in a threatening way. Of, you bet your ass we are watching the queer characters you produce, and we'll have something to say if we don't like them.
Yeah, because I think this is a tangent and really has little to nothing to do with Simon specifically, but so much representation is done so wrong, and that's so offensive.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to Simon, this show does representation so well and so effortlessly.
Yeah.
Simon is the only character that we get a defined sexuality for.
Yeah.
In this episode, in the show.
Yeah.
This show does it so well.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I think we can definitely say that, because I know you kind of said it softly, but I think we can say that. Like, he is the only one who is with a defined sexuality in the show, and that is important, and I think doesn't is not something that I would feel inclined to. It is a spoiler, but I think it may be mildly cliche at this point, but it's something that I've heard, or something I've heard a lot in the kind of internet spaces that I'm in. But it's just something I kind of also personally just believe and say a lot, is I never consider representation a spoiler.
No, it's not. It'd be like, because you wouldn't say
Because
like Heartstopper is about two queer boys. You wouldn't say that's a spoiler.
Right. But even then, even if I like personally am like of the belief, like if a show does not have a queer character until season 3, that is something actually I want to know before I watch a single episode.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Like I was about to start a sentence being like there was a period of time, and I realized, no wait, I'm still in that period of time. I basically will not watch a show without a queer character.
Valid.
It, like, one, totally ruins my immersion to not believe this world you're creating for me doesn't have a queer character. Like, guys, as much as I do enjoy it, Bridgerton is on thin ice. Like, seriously thin ice.
Is that a hot take?
I don't know.
Okay.
But I think that, at least for queer Bridgerton stands, it is not a hot take. We've been wanting more. We've been wanting the second oldest brother to be bi. His name literally starts with a B. And like, it would be so perfect. Make by Benedict happen. That is my little tiny tangent
for
in this
Bridgerton?
episode of Bridgerton. Yes, Benedict Bridgerton is perfectly ripe to be a bisexual king, and the show won't go there officially. But if you just take what the actor is doing with it, you're just like, okay, I see you.
I've never seen this. I've never seen the show.
Regardless, I mean,
so back to Simon. Why do we stand Simon?
exactly. Okay. This is what happens when we get on a tangent about representation. That needs to be a bonus episode, I think. Anyways,
let's just bring it back to Simon. Simon's good representation.
Oh yes. Okay, I guess I'll speak to why I think he's good representation now.
Okay.
You'll just kind of hear me repeat myself when I give my final thoughts.
That's fine.
I think his comfortability with his sexuality, kind of with all the other things about him, can range from either aspirational to being relatable to viewers who are already out. I've seen a lot of reactors really just, obviously, like, immediately stand that moment where he's like, I'm gay, dad. He's like, they're like, yep, yes, cool, you said the word. But like, just on a character level, the fact that this is a, like, on its face and at its most simple, it is a queer love story where one of the characters is already out. Which I think it's really easy to forget with the recent popularity of Heartstopper how uncommon that was.
Yes.
Until Heartstopper.
Yes. And season 1 did come out before Heartstopper, so it was still uncommon.
Exactly.
Like, and even with Heartstopper,
yeah,
it's still uncommon. Like, Heartstopper
is an irregularity, just like Young Royals is.
Yes, it's probably one of the only mainstream media.
Yeah, queer relationships that like doesn't have. Yeah, and it's
at least with main characters.
Yeah, and that's not to invalidate like relationships that do happen between characters who are both figuring out their sexuality. That also definitely happens. Is its own form of representation.
Yes,
but I think the idea that every single queer person in a relationship needs to conform to the same coming out timeline is a very damaging thing.
100% agree.
And honestly, for a while, like I feel like it kind of did mess up my relationship with the concept of getting a significant other to an extent. Like, even though I've been out for a good long time, like, there is an associated taboo, therefore, which Heartstopper explores. And I don't know, maybe on Royals will explore it. We won't tell you. Like, of navigating a potential relationship with someone who is closeted.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like, and like, as long as you are respectful about it, being closeted is never something you should be ashamed of. Because
Correct.
sometimes that is the most reasonable and safe choice for you.
Correct.
And that's not to say that it won't be difficult and it won't have its challenges, but like, the idea that closeted people can only date closeted people or like pursue closeted people it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it creates this unnecessary division between people who are out and people who are closeted that just doesn't, it's not reasonable. Especially as teenagers.
Yeah.
When you're still reliant on your parents.
Yes.
For everything. And so I think that Simon's a great representation in that way, but he is, like I said, for people who aren't out, he is aspirational.
100%. Even as somebody
like-
who is out,
Yeah.
I still aspire to be that, just like,
Yeah. Because let's be fair, like, there are different levels of being out, and you don't have to be the most out to be qualified as being out. Like, it's a spectrum, and it's also definitely a social construction at the same time.
oh, 100%.
Like, but regardless, like, it does take true, admirable courage to be as out as Simon is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
To have the confidence to just correct your estranged father.
I don't have that confidence. If my estranged father was like, so, Margaret, your boyfriend, I wouldn't go, actually, Brad, my girlfriend?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have the balls.
Yeah. So I guess beyond the scene with Bicca, all that's really left is kind of, we kind of been circling around, is like, we talked about how Simon kind of affects the way we see Wilhelm as a character.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way in which Simon is revealed through his interactions with Wilhelm is subtler because Simon has a lot less to hide.
Yep.
I know I said for a long time that I don't want shows without queer characters in them. Well, actually, it is very straight, but also technically has queer characters in it. I did a little Friends reference where I was like, we know he knows what Wilhelm doesn't know.
Yeah, he do.
Like,
he do.
to be clear and not turn that into a further joke. Like, he is aware, as we have mentioned, that of Wilhelm's feelings far more than Wilhelm is aware of his own feelings. And like, in the same way last episode I talked about it being dramatic irony with Villa, where we know about his feelings, but Villa doesn't, and it being like an anticipation thing of like, when is Villa going to find out? We're in the same boat as Simon. Like, Simon is us, being like, when is this boy going to figure out he likes me? Which, like,
yes.
I mean, I know it's only been a few days, but I stand that level of patience. Like,
I do too.
I honestly, like, I am not even a very confrontational person, and I feel like if someone who didn't come out to me was being as flirty with me as Wilhelm is being, I think I still would have the lack of a filter enough to be like, or like the lack of awareness to be like, okay, are you actually queer, or are you just like being friendly? Because
are you gay, or are you
and
flirting
like,
with me
again,
right now?
that's not a terribly tactful question to ask in a situation like that. And like, I would like to believe that I have the level of awareness that Simon has to not ask it. But it still takes a profound level of perception to be like, this guy wouldn't react well if I just asked him.
Yeah. I was going to say, can we also talk about how it's a good fucking thing he didn't ask that, because that would have
like I'm putting my hand just in front of my face, being like, just like shut down. Yeah.
Yeah. He's building walls. Like, if he had done that, we would have had a completely different show.
Yes. Or at least a very different pilot with a different timeline of getting to where we are right now.
Yeah. A different episode 2. Shout out to episode 2. That's coming.
It's coming
in several
soonish.
episodes from now. Yeah, like 6 episodes from now, I think.
Yes, that sounds about right. I can't remember if we...
Because I think we have 13 for episode 1.
Yes. So, but in that sense of like being in Simon's head, we also see that the moment that Simon considers, as I've mentioned before, like what it would be like to make out with Wilhelm, he goes from being like open to it to wanting it. And that's a turn that I think...
Yeah, you're talking about in the party scene?
Or like the It Takes a Fool to Remain Sane scene, like very end of the episode. Like, it's a turn from like...
Yes.
Make it, like, that turn from like being like, would it be so bad? To like, oh, like I actually do want to kiss this boy. Like I'm not teasing anymore. Like, it's a turn that I feel like, as an audience member, makes me want them to kiss more than I think Simon wants them to kiss.
You're so real for that. You're so real for saying that. And partly
that is because we have a perspective that no one character in this world has, which is getting Wilhelm's perspective and Simon's perspective, where we know how amazing this would be for Wilhelm's happiness.
Yeah, it would.
And like with Simon, like it just like it I just like with Wilhelm, I want him to be happy, and I want him to just keep having the level of confidence that he has, which means going after the things that he clearly wants. So,
yes. And Wilhelm is a thing that brings that out of him, I think.
In terms of pursuing something that like I feel like there's confidence like all around.
He's a confident boy. But he didn't need Wilhelm for that.
But I mean, we don't really have an idea whether or not Simon's considered dating somebody before, even pursued somebody before. Like he has a certain level of awareness of what's happening, and like is playful enough with Wilhelm that I want to think that he isn't totally new and like green to this. But like I said, again, kind of as in the idea of like representation not being a spoiler, we never hear about prior relationships that he's had,
right?
Or like even prior crushes, even despite the fact that we know he would have had them, if he has figured out his sexuality at this point, I would think. But like, just in the end, like, Wilhelm could. Just like Simon is for Wilhelm, Wilhelm could be that moment for Simon where like it is the real first time that he has both wanted to and felt like he might actually have the opportunity to kiss a boy in real life. And like it doesn't happen. There's a deliberate lack of resolution, but like. At the same way, like you want to know if Wilhelm gets his happiness, you want to just know if Simon gets to catch a fucking break and kiss the prince of his country at a party. There's no one who deserves it. It's him. Yeah. Like,
nah, straight up though, you're so right.
Like I think it comes down to like, Simon might not like need Wilhelm necessarily in the way that like Wilhelm needs Simon. Like we've talked about various ways in which I think Simon's like desire to be seen is validated by Wilhelm, and I think that still remains true. And that what we talked about in Revolution. But really, as an audience member, I'm not even thinking of it like that in Simon's perspective. I'm just thinking like, good for you, boy. Like get like live out our fantasies. Like even the fantasies of people who are out in the equivalent of high school. Like don't get to a place where they're like actually able to like have the opportunity to potentially even pursue something with someone in a queer way. So, do you have final thoughts or any scenes we still haven't discussed?
I think we kind of covered everything.
Okay. Do you want my like summary of why I stand Simon?
Sure, why don't you give your summary of why you stand Simon?
Okay. We keep talking about how bringing up Simon in our conversations on this podcast makes us feel better. Which is something I think to highlight.
It does.
Like, Simon is a person who is unafraid to stick close to his beliefs, but also a person whose family struggles we see up close and personal, and we see what he chooses to do for his family and the way he chooses to sacrifice himself. And more than anything, as I was just saying, like every good person, like every good queer person, Simon deserves a boyfriend.
True shit.
But I think as a tiny caveat, despite this being despite this being a character episode, I want to have this little moment that I don't think I had in Revolution. And to say that in reflecting on why I stand Wilhelm and why I stand Simon, I think it's important to recognize that for me personally, so let's see if you can follow this, and hopefully our listeners can too. I want Simon to be with Wilhelm more than I want Wilhelm to be with Simon.
What?
Okay. I figured that might be confusing. Basically, I am more concerned in this episode, or like more invested in Simon choosing to date Wilhelm than I am Wilhelm choosing to date Simon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, basically, again, this could come down to me relating to Wilhelm more, as I mentioned in previous episodes. But, like, I think also, it's not to say that Simon wouldn't, there wouldn't be like a happiness bump and benefit for Simon to date Wilhelm. But really, it just is, I think, honestly hampered by, you just know Simon is at risk here, and like more at risk here. Like, August's hostility towards even just the possibility of a friendship between Simon and Wilhelm just makes me makes me nervous for the repercussions that this relationship could have for Simon specifically. Like,
okay, I see what you mean.
From the perspective of the person at Helershka who's most aligned with what the royal family wants, Wilhelm is the one who needs protecting, and Simon is the enemy.
Yeah, according
to August, whose morals are explicitly aligned with the royal family, and you get this kind of the situation where if you kind of sit like this, like we have, even with just what's happened in this episode, I think you can sit and be like, okay, thinking about the potential for this relationship, I think it's really great to get Wilhelm out of this emotional prison that he's in that I mentioned last episode.
Mm-hmm.
But it also could bring a whole lot of drama into the life of a boy whose life is kind of already a little dramatic.
Simon. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Like,
But I would also put forth the argument that Simon knows what he's doing a hell of a lot more than Wilhelm does.
I think,
like, whether knows, like, because I think he knows what he feels for the prince, and I think he knows that Wilhelm feels it as well at this stage.
Right. I think I am just really,
and so
I just want to say I'm hesitant based on his reaction in this episode to like the royal family and the prince.
Yes.
That he like gets what making out with a prince actually means.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying he understands what the repercussions are going to be.
Yeah.
I'm just saying he knows what he's feeling.
Yes. But in terms of in terms of standing this person and their choices, like I much more stand. I mentioned it like in Wilhelm's episode. I much more stand a relationship for him and Simon for Wilhelm, honestly, than I stand a relationship between Simon and Wilhelm as this person who loves Simon, because I just know for all the good it could bring him, how much trouble is on the other end of it too, because I know what Wilhelm is going through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
God damn, you fucking hit the nail on the head every time, and I just never have anything to add to it.
English major, baby. No, I'm kidding.
All right. I guess we're going to close it out. Yeah, you're the worst. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to keep up to date with when we release new episodes and other pod-related announcements, you can check out our Instagram at People Don't Talk About. Our next episode will be the first of a new episode type, Character Assassination. We'll be roasting all things August Season 1, Episode 1, so stay tuned. And with that, all that's left to say is...
Let's start a revolution, baby.